Hello, beauties. Welcome to Moms Unboxed, a podcast where I unbox with you the how to's, tips, and tricks to empower women to upgrade relationships, intimacy, and parenting. I'm your host, Melanie Caroline, a multidimensional woman, life coach, lover, and mom who's made a lot of fucking mistakes. If you want to live a sensual and liberated life, you've come to the right space. Don't forget to follow Moms Unboxed because you don't want to miss an episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Moms Unboxed. I am so pleased that you're here with me, tuning in this week. I hope that you're having a fantastic week. I know that I have been struggling with some fear this week as my partner and I go deeper into our relationship and start opening up new doors. This fear is starting to arise. Like it's always been there. It was dormant for a little while. And then we started having these conversations about boundaries and limitations. And suddenly this fear is just crippling me. It feels like a elephant is sitting on my chest or someone is reaching in and squeezing my heart. Can y'all relate? Because I know that there are some mamas out there who do live in fear. And whether it's fear of starting a new job, fear of leaving a partner, fear of going on your first date after a divorce, fear that something is going to happen to your kids, that is so common. Even for me, I think about all the scenarios that are going to be happening, and fear can be extremely crippling. It can cause us to isolate, to avoid. It can cause us to react from a place of anger. It can really disrupt our life. So, if you know a woman or a mama who lives in fear, and really wants to know more about how to navigate fear, send this to her. We're going to be talking about the amygdala and how that is our fear's command center. And we're also going to be talking about how to walk hand in hand with fear. Yes, I have coined that term because fear sometimes just doesn't go away, but we have to learn to live with fear throughout our life. So send this to someone who could use more knowledge about their fear and how to work with fear so that they can still have a beautiful, flourishing life, even in the midst of dealing and processing fear. Ladies, that's what we're unboxing this week. Fear, fear. Woo! So, as I stated, I have been having these deep emotional conversations with my partner, Donnie, around our relationship and what it looks like for us moving forward. And this is pretty common to want to have these type of conversations. Whether people do it or not, that is a deeper question. A lot of times we just kind of we walk the line, right? We take the path and we start walking. We're just taking action and we're not exactly thinking about what we're doing in our relationship or within our job or what we want for our future because we get real comfortable. We get real comfortable, and humans don't like feeling uncomfortable. So rather than choosing a path of growth and evolution, we stay stagnated. And sometimes that's okay. If that's okay with you, girl, live your life. But for me, I'm always wanting to get myself out there, get my business out there. As a divine energy healer, I have to talk to people. That's not always comfortable for me. I want to grow in my relationship. And that means it's going to be uncomfortable because let's face it, if your growth isn't uncomfortable, I question how it is you're growing. I mean, unless you're just a boss bitch, you have so much courage and bravery that you don't face any fear. Oh, girl, I commend you. Give me some of that medicine. I need that. Because right now, the fear is like, it's like so tight around my heart. And even on social media, I think it's so brave for people to put their life on social media. People are okay with showing their emotions, what they're experiencing. And I struggle with social media. Even still, I just don't, I don't know. I'm trying to like it. And I don't think there's necessarily like this fear. Okay, bullshit. There is some fear around it. There's fear that people won't believe me or fear that people will judge me. And I think this is pretty common around fear is like fear is stemmed from our limiting beliefs, from narratives that we tell ourselves based on our history. Fear is stemmed from people who have betrayed us, people who we thought were our friends are not our friends, people we thought were going to love us but ended up cheating on us, our parents who we wanted to feel safe and secure with actually leaving, causing abandonment issues. So now we have fears that people are going to abandon us. So fear grows from a lot of different things. It's like a weed in this beautiful garden bed that we're trying so hard to grow, but the fuckers just keep coming up. The fear just keeps coming up. It keeps arising. Like we think we're really good one day, even maybe for a couple months, and then suddenly something triggers us and we're like, I'm scared. I feel scared. I feel nervous. I feel anxiety. And all these things go hand in hand, right? Where we have fear and then we get anxiety. And then from the anxiety, we have worrisome thoughts. And then when we worry, we perseverate and we just keep going on this cycle until we get off the fucking ride. But it's really hard to get off the ride once it starts. So, what part of our brain is responsible for our fear response? And I will tell you that it's the amygdala. And if you don't know what the amygdala is, it's this central part of our brain that literally controls our fight, fear, fawn, flight response. So it pumps out like these hormones that says, I'm in survival mode. Once these hormones get released, we start having irritability, confusion, stress, anxiety. And did you know that our amygdala over time grows when we are in survival mode? So there is this book I read, it was a Buddhism book, and it was talking about joy and how people who have enlarged amygdalas actually experience less joy because of their stress, their anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder. One of the studies that was done was how meditation affects the amygdala. There were two groups of people. One group meditated, the other group didn't, and they would do these scans of the brain. And they found that the folks who meditated and practiced mindfulness actually showed a shrinkage of the amygdala. So the amygdala was actually shifting in size, which I thought was freaking crazy. So crazy. And I truly believe that meditation and mindfulness makes a huge difference in the way we process our fear, process stress, and our anxiety. And meditation doesn't necessarily need to look like I'm just going to sit and quiet my brain and I'm not going to think. Because especially when you're first starting out with meditation, that shit doesn't work all the time. And that's why people don't do it. They're like, well, I just can't do that. Look, yesterday I was processing my fear in a meditative way that allowed me to express my emotions. So I was putting on Corn, Alice in Chains, Nine Inch Nails. Like I was putting on that type of music, right? And I was just singing, bellowing, like as loud as I could. I was using my voice. I was moving the fear through me. And then I created sage with hibiscus in it, apple blossoms, frankincense. What else did I put in there? Lemongrass. So I was creating this incense and burning it and breathing in smell. And then I was moving my body. I was dancing. I was crying. I was journaling. That is meditative. That is what is going to help you move through fear. So it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to sit down and meditate and no, your amygdala is not going to shift in size after one meditation. This was a prolonged study. And one of the studies, the monk actually participated in this study. So obviously, a monk is meditating in the more traditional form that is going to help decrease the response of the amygdala. So I want you to know that if you're experiencing fear, the key is to not resist it. The key is not to push it away or shove it down or ignore it. What's actually better for fear is to respond to it, understand it, investigate it, talk to your fear because that fear is a part of you. And what happens when we ignore the fear, it comes out in different ways, like reaction. You get angry, you get sad, you start yelling, you become isolated and resistant. And that's just not the way you want to process the fear. Some people go jogging, go boxing. Some people go out in nature. I like to go within myself. I like to understand myself on a deeper level. Therefore, I like to just be in my office, putting on music, burning incense, moving my body, screaming, crying, journaling, not necessarily in that order, but that's how I process the fear. I ask fear, what is it you're here to teach me? What are you afraid of? And you'll be surprised. Fear has an answer for you. Because, like I said, that fear is you. There's a part of you that is protecting yourself. And it's up to you to understand, well, what is fear protecting me from? So, if you're starting a new job, your fear might be protecting you from not being welcomed or not being included, being the new person. It's always a little bit scary to be the new person. And trust me, I know this because this is coming from the woman who had like 10 different schools before junior high. I was always the new kid, and I never stayed long enough to actually be like established and have close friends before I moved again. So if you're having fear around going on a first date, What is the fear there? Is the fear that you'll be rejected? Are you fearing the awkwardness that you might experience? Or perhaps it's like fear around your safety. I know that going on a date with a new person can be extremely scary. It's like, I don't want to be kidnapped. Women especially are vulnerable on a first date. And there's also always some type of fear. So guess what, girlfriend? Get a backup plan. Make sure your friends know where you're going. Make sure your friends know the person's name, how you met them. Like, give them all the deets. And then if you need to bail out of there, make sure you have a designated friend to call you and say, hey, you need to come home. Your kiddo's sick. I've totally done that before. So that's how I know that. Not because I was fear of the date, but because the date was not going well and he was pushing me very hard to go back to his dorms. This was like years ago. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not about that life. So understanding fear will help you create a plan. Like, okay, I'm having fear around developing my relationship, and we need to talk about the boundaries and the plan and all the things. And I have to talk about them multiple times, multiple times, to the point where my partner Donnie is like, when will you trust me? And I'm like, when you prove that you do the thing and then you come back home and you're still the same. For him, it's like, oh, I trust you because we're having these conversations, because we're being open and vulnerable with each other. And so we both process our fear in different ways. Unfortunately, I have been in fear. I've lived with fear most of my life. So my fear is very blah, in your face. And I have to talk to my fear. So that's the thing is, okay, noticing the fear is there. And then also, where is it at in your body? Is it in your heart center? Is it in your stomach where your solar plexus is? Do you feel the fear in your throat where you feel like your voice is being shut down? Is it in your throat chakra, right? Does fear cause you headaches? That would be in your third eye. So fear can present itself in numerous different positions in your body and different sensations. So it's understanding, like, what is the difference between feeling and experiencing anxiety versus fear? Perhaps it's the same, and maybe it's not. So when we become conscious of the experience we're having with fear, that's when we go in and investigate it. We welcome the fear. And when we welcome the fear to just be there without resisting it, you know what happens is it softens. We hold the fear with tenderness and we notice it. We get to observe the fear. And when we do this, we can then ask, what are you doing here, fear? What are you hoping to teach me? How is it you're protecting me right now? And know that when you are asking these questions, when you're trying to understand your fear more, you're also shifting the relationship with fear. Because instead of allowing the fear to control you, you're saying, fear, I'm here, but I'm in the driver's seat. I'm in control of my emotions, of my responses to fear. So think about that right now. If you are experiencing fear, what does it feel like for you in your body? Does it feel like tightening in your chest? Or does it feel like your throat is closing off? Does your jaw clench? Does it make you feel agitated, angry, like you want to scream? What is the fear stimulus? Do you get visual images and start creating these stories within your mind based around your fear? You start thinking of all the things that cause you fear and all the scenarios of what could go wrong, right? Which is also feeding into that fear. What is it for you? When we start feeding into the fear, when we're not in the driver's seat of fear, that's when we start experiencing more anxiety, panic attacks, stress, loss of sleep, loss of appetite, or more appetite. We start seeing all these symptoms come out to meet the need of fear and to distract us from actually facing the fear. And that's what, coping is. We cope by finding all these external things to distract us from what is really going on internally. We have to start understanding the root causes of our human emotions, both functionally and behaviorally. We all are unique beings. So, although we understand what fear is, right? It's going to present itself in different ways. And based on the way it's being presented, might be the way that you start addressing and processing it. We're all going to process our fear in different ways, just like anxiety or stress or various different moods that we experience. And if you're thinking, well, Mel, can't fear be used for good? Well, yeah, absolutely. Fear can be used for good. And this is something that I have been working on and is transforming my relationship with fear. I, in the past, have experienced a lot of abusive relationships. Now, I don't fear being in abusive relationships because I know what red flags and signs to look for. Physical distance and proximity is one of the most basic stimulus that triggers fear. You're going to understand that interpersonal distance is important to be mindful of. If you're on a date and the guy is like getting too close to your face and you're not comfortable with kissing them, right? Your alarms are going off. You're releasing cortisol and you're going to be prepared to either say something or push the guy or punch him or whatever. Like you're going to defend yourself based on the proximity and his reaction to your warning. So this is something that is good. If you were abandoned a lot as a kid, you're going to look for the signs that maybe someone is not being committed to you or someone is looking to leave. Someone's not taking you as serious. If you've been cheated on in the past, based on your history, you're going to understand what the signs are to someone's cheating on you. And fear plays a role in this because fear is going to help you understand those red flags. What happens when fear is a problem is that, for instance, I'm just going to keep using the example of someone cheating on you because that's what we're talking about next week on Moms Unboxed. But when you have been cheated on, when fear is a problem, is that you're looking automatically or subconsciously for the signs of someone cheating. So someone doesn't want to share their password on their phone, or someone's coming home late. Someone smells like perfume. And when I mean someone, I mean your partner. So our brains are going to subconsciously look for these signs from a place of fear. It is our fear response to look for these red flags. And it becomes a problem when we start obsessing and we start creating scenarios and we start telling ourselves these stories that our partner's cheating on us because they came home late. Turns out they just had dinner with a coworker and their freaking phone died, you know? Or like, do you guys ever, I don't know. In Washington State, there's this show. It's called the Brooke and Jubal show. Actually, I don't know it. No, I think it's called Brooke and Jeffrey. Yeah, Brooke and Jeffrey. That's what it's called now. Anyways, they do this segment called To Catch a Cheater. And, there's a good variety of men and women calling in to catch their partner cheating. But a lot of the signs that they're thinking their partner is cheating is, they're coming home late for work. Suddenly they have lots of excuses to stay at work, or they smell perfume on their clothes, or they noticed that the clothes that they are wearing in the morning is different from the clothes that they were wearing when they came home at night. Well, sometimes the partner isn't cheating. Like, I remember one episode where the wifey was like, yeah, he totally came home in different clothes that night. And turns out the dude shit himself and was so embarrassed. He couldn't tell his wife. He had like a work party dinner that night. And so his boss's wife gave him the boss's clothes so that he could change and not be completely embarrassed. And his wife was like, you were in different clothes. There was a hotel card in your pocket, like all this shit. And he's like, yeah, that's because they were my boss's clothes and I sharded myself and I was so embarrassed I couldn't tell you. We are going to be overly responsive to those things and overreact based on previous experiences. So she had been previously cheated on. So her automatic reaction was like, fuck, he's cheating on me. And another example in my relationship right now is like, he's gonna fucking leave just like everybody else does. I'm just waiting for it to happen. And that's where fear starts to become a detriment in our relationship, is when you start actually waiting for the thing to happen, or you're coming up reasons as to why the thing is going to happen, why he's going to leave me. And that can erode the trust in a relationship. So we have to be very mindful of how fear plays a role in your life. If you are fearful that you're going to get in a car wreck all the time and that prevents you from driving the car around town, that's going to affect your ability to get your kids to and from school, to get your kids to and from sports, to get groceries, to go to the dental appointments, right? Because that fear is literally crippling you. And so we have to manage our ability to work through and work with the fear, because we don't want fear to be so embracive. We still have to be in the driver's seat so that we can function day to day, so that we can have healthy relationships, so that we can get out of the house. Because when we're crippled by fear, what happens is we start getting depressed, right? We start getting even more stressed, even more anxious. We become isolated. And that's not great for our mental health either. So as you're investigating fear, truly holding that fear with compassion, with tenderness and mercy, like trying to understand that part of you so it's not crippling you. And as I said, there are numerous ways to understand our fear and how that motivates our behaviors so that we can process it in a healthy way. And when we start processing it, when we invite it to come forward, that fear actually starts to soften. We start to come up with solutions on how we can manage the fear, whether that's talking to your partner about your fears, whether that's encouraging yourself to get out of the house or to apply for a new job, because part of what helps with fear is just having the courage to understand it, having the courage to take the brave steps forward, having the courage to have the difficult conversations. And in this way, fear can be learned and unlearned. Some fears might be innate, which is obviously going to be when we are in those situations where fear is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And then, as I said, many fears are learned through our negative experiences, through the experiences that had an impact on us. For instance, I was hiking at my river spot, and this river spot is very isolated. Not a lot of people know about it. But I just kept having this like fear that I was going to run into someone. And sure enough, I was coming up from the river and this dog was loose and he just started barking at me and like very viciously barking at me and getting closer and closer. And the owner was trying to call the dog and the dog wasn't listening. And I was like, please come get your dog. And obviously, in this way, I was fucking fearful of dogs after that for a little while. I literally had to unlearn to be scared of all the dogs that I saw because not all dogs are going to be vicious and barking at me and looking as if they're going to attack me. And so doing this took some practice. It took mental fortitude to conversate with myself, to tell myself that I was safe in this situation, that not all dogs are vicious. And you might be needing to do the same thing around a situation that you might be fearful of something. Like, I know a lot of people, fear can also be taught, right? So if your mom was scared of spiders, you might have grown up being scared of spiders. Not necessarily think that spiders are actually going to kill you, but there's just this innate fear that you learn through observation, and now you're scared of spiders. So that is the great news, is that through exposure therapy and psychological techniques, some fears can be unlearned. And some fears are also unlearned through gaining trust. For instance, the cheating. I'll go back to that. Learning to trust your partner fully and completely is going to help settle that fear. Now, you might always be looking for those subtle red flags, but it's not enough for you to freak out and have a conversation about. It's like, oh, you're observing. And obviously, if your observations continue to show that this is becoming a problem, it's becoming a thing where he's coming home out late at night, 5 days out of the week, well, obviously, yeah, you're going to have a conversation. But what's not going to happen is that you're not going to yell at him. You're not going to accuse them. You're not going to point the finger at them as if they've already cheated. That's where fear becomes irrational. No, you're just going to say, hey, I've noticed that, you've been coming home later and you've been texting a lot more when I'm around. I was just curious about what that was. The fearful part of me is telling me that you might be cheating on me. Like, it's totally okay to express your fears. That is super brave and vulnerable, and that helps kind of settle that fear because you're not resisting it, you're naming it. And that is actually one technique that we can use with our emotions, is just naming the emotion. Hey, I'm experiencing fear right now because of this. And I know it might be irrational. I know it might not be concerning, but for some reason, this is just what my brain is telling me. So that is actually going to open up a gateway for deeper conversations in your relationship, even with your kids. Your kids asked to go to a party, and you're like, fuck no, you're not going to any parties. And you start becoming irrational. You start raising your voice because this is actually coming from a place of fear. Because perhaps when you went to parties as a teenager, you had this extremely bad experience. And now you're protecting your child, but it's coming from a place of fear. The best way to understand that fear and help your child understand why you're reacting the way you are is to explain the fear there. Like, hey, when mom was 16, I was at this party and there was this giant fight and someone pulled out a gun. And so ever since then, I just have been super cautious around you kids going to any type of parties or gatherings because of this bad experience I had. Now, if we literally protected our children from every bad experience we had, especially for those who have had a traumatic childhood or teen years, like our kids would never do anything. If I literally could wrap my kids in a bubble and keep them home all the time, I probably would because my brain comes up with every fucking scenario that could go wrong. Like literally, my brain can be so dramatic and crippling. When I first moved into my partner's house, I literally thought of every fucking scenario of how a person could break into this house because I hate the neighborhood, how they could break into this house and what I would do. And it would get so visceral that my body would start responding as if it was happening. You know, I became short of breath. My heartbeat started beating super rapidly. I started trembling. I started getting headaches. I literally would see these people breaking into windows with my mind's eye. And I was like, how the fuck am I going to deal with this? I used to do it in the shower all the time. I'm like, okay, if someone breaks in, I'm going to fucking turn on the water as hot as I can. I'm going to spray them with it. And then I'm going to fucking rub this shampoo all up in their eyeballs. Like, that is literally the way my fucking brain thinks. And I hate it at times. And I know, like, it's not really great to hate part of yourself. But I've had to work super hard on telling myself that I am safe, that I'm going to be okay if I go on a hiking trip alone. I'm still actually working on this one because I really, really, really want to go hiking. But there's just this fear there that something dangerous is going to happen. And when I read like these hiking group stories, lately I've been seeing my mom disappeared 4 years ago at this hiking spot. Let us know if you find anything. Or someone fell off a cliff and passed away. Or someone rock climbing died. Like there's all this shit coming up for me that I'm having to face. And I'm like, I don't want this to prevent me from actually going hiking because I really, really want to go hiking. Okay, what can I do to create a safer environment for me? Bear spray, first aid kit, bring in a freaking gun. Like, I will do that so that I feel safe to go hiking by myself because there was a time where I wasn't scared of that. But now that I'm having all these like real fears around it, I have to come up with, okay, I see the fear. In this case, it wants me to be prepared should something happen. And I'm going to do what I can to prepare for that. I actually have fucking mace right now in my Amazon cart. Not just for me, but for my kids because they're getting to the age, especially my oldest, where he wants to go wander around the town. I can't keep him bubbled in. He needs to have experiences of his own in this life. He has to be prepared. That's the best thing we can do for our children is just prepare them. Not keep them locked up, but prepare them for real life scenarios. Shit that could happen. Shit we don't want to have happen, but things fucking happen. That's just the reality of it. We don't think it would be us, but sometimes, you know, it's someone we know. It's someone we're close to, and we have to be prepared. I just went on a big old fucking rampage. I barely took a breath. So you see how passionate I am around understanding our fear, welcoming the fear, holding the fear, labeling the fear, processing it. What can we do to prepare so that we are not crippled by the fear? So, mamas, what can we do to help with the fear further? As I said, we name it to tame it, baby. Just name the emotion that you experience. Notice its physical sensations, where it's at in the body, how is it showing up in your body, what are the physical symptoms that you're having, and what are the thoughts running through your mind at the time that fear is arising. pinpoint the trigger. What happened to cause the fear in the first place? Understanding the why is so important, especially when we want to have these deeper, more open, vulnerable conversations with the people that we are in a relationship with, our partner, our children, even coworkers. Practice calming techniques. So, deep breathing is very important. So, square breathing when you're inhaling for 4, holding for 4, and exhaling for 4. We can also try a grounding technique where we are focusing for 3 minutes, 1 minute on your breath, another minute on your environment, and another minute just really tapping into the body and noticing the fear there. Practicing mindfulness techniques reduces our reactions. Like I said, meditating, expressing, doing somatic work, dancing, working out, jogging. You can even do some spells if you're witchy like me. Really understanding that fear and doing these practices also, like I said, reduces the amount of cortisol that flows through our body. And that is responsible for our fight, flight, fawn, and freeze response. So, also having exposure therapy. This is helpful when it comes to overcoming phobias and certain anxieties. Understanding that you are brave, you are courageous, you can start small with overcoming the fears. So if you have a fear of public speaking, just start small. Talk to a friend or a small group of people. Record yourself and watch that recording. Rate the fear even. So if you can imagine like a fear ladder, when you rate it from a 0 to 10, 10 being the worst, 0 being less, that also helps you acknowledge to yourself that the fear is softening or perhaps the fear is spiking. So, acknowledging to yourself that the techniques that you are using to soften the fear is working is also going to help you build that courage and be more vulnerable to move through the fear. And then also noticing when you're having negative stories that arise or catastrophic thinking or worried thoughts. These things contribute to our fear. So we want evidence of what's really happening because it is so easy for our minds to just take us on this wild roller coaster ride, right? You have to be in the driver's spot of fear. Other things that can help with fear within your lifestyle is having a healthy, well-balanced diet. Having physical activity on a regular basis is going to reduce the stress, the anxiety, the fear. Having sufficient sleep, having social connection, having hobbies and different ways to relax is also going to help you be more in tune with yourself so that you have the ability to hold space for fear. All right, mamas, that is it for this week. Stay tuned because I'm coming out with a meditation solely based so that you can help yourself walk hand in hand with fear without resisting it, but actually holding it with tenderness, welcoming it, starting to understand and investigate the fear that lies within you so that you can thrive and flourish in your life. If you thought this episode was helpful, please send it to your friend who also might be experiencing some fear in her life. If you want to have a further conversation, connect with me at Moms Unboxed Facebook group. I hope to see you in there. Don't forget to live a liberated and sensual unboxed life. Until the next time, sunshine. Thank you again for joining me for another episode of Moms Unboxed. If you have a topic or relationship question, connect with me at I am Melanie Caroline. And don't forget to follow Moms Unboxed. May you live a liberated, sensual, and unboxed life. Until the next time, sunshine.